Okay, Parshas Yitro. We are continuing the theme that we started, I think, 2 weeks ago. And that's what you see in your sheets. It says Dibur Part 2. And we're going to look at not the Aseret HaDibrot inside, but we're going to develop the idea of Dibur further. And what we are going to do today, which is really a matnat chinam, a free gift of, you know who, I call the secret weapon, Heshi. We are going to analyze and explore two fundamental ideas. And you will see that so much of what we've learned now expands and becomes enriched. And you will see that ideas we worked with now take on even greater dimensions. And what we learned today will serve as a foundation for so much more that we will learn in the future. Today's ideas are like fundamental building blocks. But they're ideas that are sophisticated and philosophical, and because we've been working with those type of ideas for a while, it will be, something that will fit into familiar contours for us, won't be out of the blue, and so we'll try to really work with it. This year probably will take 2 weeks, to be honest with you. In any case, let's just review, okay? To review, we said that Dibur and Davar are related, and we explained that they are the same word, they share the same root, because a davar, something in particular, something concrete that we can identify and therefore work with, cannot exist unless it is created by a dibur. In other words, we need to identify what something is before we can work with it. We have to give it some type of what we call in Hebrew actually teva, a box. In Hebrew, letters are tevot, a box, a bunch of letters together, a word is a teva. And unless it has a box or a frame, that's the modern word, to frame something, you really don't know what you're dealing with. So we gave an example, right? A kid comes home from school and says, it was a bad day and it's not good. And the mother has to help the child identify, sort out what that means. So the mother says, well, what's bothering you? Are you confused? Are you worried? Are you sad? Are you afraid? Are you feeling alone? Are you, whatever? All kinds of different suggestions for the specific feeling that child is experiencing but doesn't know how to identify. And once the specific emotion is identified by being given a word for it or a frame for it, then you can recognize it. You can have awareness of what you're dealing with, and you can start to sort it out and work with it and develop a plan of action, and etc. So a davar becomes a davar by a dibur. Now clearly, everything in the world became a thing by Hashem's dibur. And what we are saying is that the dibrot, based on this idea, the dibrot are what? Are they words and ideas? Are they ideas? Or do they create a davar, a real existing reality? And of course we're going to answer, yes, they create a reality. So that the dibrot do not become theories, like some type of external information or requirements. God is telling us what is required. Rather, the dibrot create a new phenomenon in the world, that the truths expressed in them, I am your God, there are no other gods, everything we have in there, do not use God's name in vain, Shabbos, honoring the parents, all the rest, the moral and ethical laws, they become a concrete, substantial reality. Now that means they cannot be ignored, and that also means that they cannot be related to as ideas that I can choose or not choose to connect myself to. They're not concepts that are abstract. They are realities, which mean that if I don't absorb them and live by them, I'm not going to be able to make it. In not necessarily physically and not spiritually. They are real, they create a reality that I must respect, and I must learn to make it my reality. For example, you say to someone, you know, you can't drink soda, you know, for your drink. You can't always drink soda. Now, what are you saying? Are you telling a person instructions, you are not allowed to drink sodas, and the person says, oh, well, actually, yeah, want to see me? I can drink soda. Here I go. I can drink soda. So the person drinks soda, but drinking soda all the time, we know the consequences. The person learns through experience that they can't drink soda. They will, God forbid, become a diabetic, or they're going to be sick. They're going to end up with, they're not going to make it. So when I say you can't drink soda, now I'm going to give you two Hebrew words that are very important. Am I giving them a chiyuv, a requirement, or am I telling them the mitzvot, the reality? Which one is it? Is it chiyuv or is it mitzvot? It's the mitzvot. It's the reality. You just can't. It's part of the system. The system doesn't work like this, and you can't override it. This is how it is. So the dibrot are not chiyuvim. They're not meant to be related to as a bunch of obligations external to myself that I may or may not relate to. They are the mitzvot. This is how it has to work. They have to become integrated into our psyche, that they are the way we have to operate, because there is no other way to operate. That can work. Now when I say that can work, what does that mean, right? We're going to get into that. So we said here, being out of sync and relating to the mitzvot as externally imposed regulations leaves us at risk of having a gap between what we do and who we are. Now this puts us at risk of galut. Remember that? When we relate to the dibrot, Torah essentially, because all the Torah is contained in the dibrot, as obligations that I am required to do, and then there's me, who is picking and choosing and deciding and worrying about it, then what ends up happening is there is a disconnect clearly between the way I should live and the way I am living. And when there's that kind of disconnect, what often can happen is that a person can, you know, externally look as if they're accepting all the mitzvot. They can, you know, present themselves as a person who believes and keeps all the mitzvot, but in reality, if they're not part of the person's essence, there's going to be a lot of a lot of situations where the person gives in to other forces and does not act in accordance, and there's a huge gap between their presentation and their real life. That, we said, ultimately leads to galut, alienation. Galut comes from the word ligalot, to expose, to reveal. When it becomes, unfortunately it could happen that a person has to endure a situation where it becomes exposed to everyone that they are not who they are pretending to be and who they are presenting themselves to be, and the kind of person who they are dressing like they are, okay? Or they are talking like they are, or they are setting up their life like they are. They're not that person. They're a whole different person inside. I mean, we didn't have to give examples. That leads, when a person is exposed, they enter galut, exile, because exile is when you're out of your place. There's no safe place to hide. There's no safe place to retreat. There's no identity to present. There is no I. Everybody looks right through the I and says, that's not you. Their person is drifting, and there is no safe, secure place to hide in, or to restore, to try to, to argue or to convince others that this is who I really am. Everyone says we know better. Now the tikkun of that is closing the gap between who I present myself to be and who I am. That is the tikkun. We talked about the dangers. That's in last week's share. We're not going to go into it. Now, we said the greatest violation of koach hadibur, of speaking, okay, is that it is not used to frame and concretize great truths and great ideas that then transform our lives and bring us into God's mitzvot reality and make our reality God's reality, which is the purpose of dibrot. The greatest violation is when words are used, and this is galut and legalot, to expose other people's shortcomings, Lashon hara. To expose other people's struggling, to reveal that, hey, that person is not who they think they are. And throughout the Galut, that's exactly what our enemies have tried to do to us, always try to show that we don't deserve any credibility or special recognition or honor or respect, because who are the Jews? They're no different than anyone else, and they always look for the weakest link, and they make up lies. There was no Holocaust, there was no temple on the Har HaBayis, nothing, right? It's all not who they're pretending. They're not who they're pretending to be. There's a danger of falling into that. We spoke about that too. But what we're going to talk about today is that this tikkun is using words like the Dibrot to bring the reality into our awareness and connect us with it. That's what the tikkun of words is. That's what we're supposed to do. And today what we're going to do with that is work with two new words. Okay? Two new words. I mean, they're not new, but they're new in terms of our exploring them. Words that we have to concretize, and we have to be able to allow ourselves to, become aware of how they transform the way we think, and could ultimately transform the way we are. These two words are Chachma and Ratzon. Wisdom, Chachma, and will. Wisdom and will. And the reason we're dealing with these words is because we're going to ask a question about the whole Torah, giving of the Torah. Was the Torah that Hashem gave us, was the creation of the world and the creation and the giving of the Torah, was that an act of Chachma or an act of Ratzon? Now it seems everyone automatically has, what's the answer? Did Hashem create the world and create us in it and give us the Torah as an act of will or as an act of pure Chachma? When we say Chachma, we mean, if it's Chachma, if it's the wisdom of God, then by definition what that word is synonymous with is it's the truth. God's wisdom, the world God created, all of what's in the Torah, which reflects a higher non-physically written Torah called the Oraita, all of that is God's wisdom, God's mind, which obviously must be the truth. Is this world an expression of a truth, a reality, a mitzvot that is absolutely true? Or is this world a reflection of God's will? What is this? How, and everything in our day-to-day lives. Is it Ratzon? When we do mitzvot, are we doing something because it's true and it's correct and it's God's wisdom and therefore it must be done? Or are we doing it because it's Hashem's will? Which one is it? Is it but when we do mitzvahs because Hashem wills it and we want to connect to Hashem's will?
That's our will, but the fact that the world is creation, that would be Hashem's Chachma.
Hashem's Chachma, here's one side, because the world is the entire composite of everything that exists here, physical and spiritual, reflects divine wisdom. And it must be, right? So, but when we do a mitzvah thing, say, I'm doing it because Hashem wants me to, or I'm doing it because it must be done, because God's wisdom demands it, therefore it's important for the world.
Then we'd have no bechira.
Correct. Which one would give us no bechira? As Chachma would take away a certain amount of bechira, well, or it limits bechira, correct, absolutely correct. So let's analyze the problems. People like to say, clearly, that Hashem created, when we say, why did Hashem create the world? What do we say? Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra. Before everything was ever created, Hashem ruled before anything was created. Okay? And after it's all over, Hashem is going to rule. And at a certain point, Hashem made everything from His will. So what was the motivation for the creation of the world? He made it out of His will, Ratzon. Now, this is important to understand, because if Hashem has Ratzon, we have Ratzon, and if Hashem doesn't have Ratzon, we can't have Ratzon. We certainly can't have a quality God doesn't have. But there's a major problem with of Ratzon. There's a major problem with Ratzon. Hashem created the world because He desired it. He willed it. Not that there's a he or she. Hashem's will brought the world into existence. Major dilemma. When we want something, okay, so we do it, why do we have a will, a Ratzon for something? Why do we have a Ratzon for something? A desire because we feel, we've become aware, not in every stage of your life is different of what we want, but we become aware that we need this too in our lives. That's why we desire it, because we need it. When a person needs something, it means they don't have it. It means they are lacking.
It's not necessarily
No,
true.
it's wanting. To want.
So, even in the English language, we say, she wanted for nothing. My father used to say this. Wanted for nothing. Means she needed nothing. We're going to get to when Ratzon, when wanting something is not connected at all to needing it. But for most, 99.9% of human experience, you want it because you feel you need it. And if you need it and you want it, it's because you don't have it. So you're lacking, you're needing, and then when you do the effort to get what you're wanting and needing, something has changed. We have a problem with this, which is that Aristotle, which you'll see, I didn't bring the quote, but you could look it up if you want to, he took a position that was very, very logical, and he said, hold on a second, if you're going to say that God created the world because he willed it, he had Ratzon, you are essentially saying that something was missing, God needed it, wanted it, and then he made it so now it was different, something changed, now Hashem had his world, which wasn't before. So hold on a second, can God be missing something? What kind of God is that? And what was God missing? Company, the intelligence to make a world, the courage, the strength? What was missing? In other words, why did Hashem decide to make a world now? Why not before? Now Aristotle, listen very carefully. If this world is a world of pure Chachma, wisdom, okay, pure wisdom, then wisdom we said is emes, right? It's true. If this whole entire creation, physical and spiritual, represents God's wisdom is emes, does that change? Is it different? Does his wisdom grow? Can emes ever change? It can't ever change. There cannot be a change. In fact, we say Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. Something that is eternal never is sheker. It's always emes. Emes must always be emes. You can't have, well, it's emes. Now it's, if it's Chachma and it's emes, then you know what Aristotle says? It's eternal. Can't change. You cannot have a God who changes, has things that he didn't have before, needs things. It doesn't make any sense. That's not a God. You need to say that God, this world is the total expression of God's wisdom. Wisdom is truth. Truth is eternal. The principles of creation of the physical world and God always coexisted together. God and the principles of creation, the physical rules, always were here together. There was no moment of creation. There was no decision or will to create. It's too big of a problem. And Rambam says, correct, he's right as far as logic goes, where logic gets you. Either you have to deny God's Chachma and God's emes, or you don't. And Aristotle's not willing to deny that this world is Chachma and the rules are the rules, and they form a whole system. So he denies Ratzon. And there is no way to prove Ratzon through logic and direct exploration.
There are midrashim that say there were worlds before ours.
Yeah.
That the God, if he willed it
That's
to
all
exist,
Ratzon.
he can will it to not exist.
That's Ratzon. Aristotle denies Ratzon. And that is the logical position to take if you use if you're just going step by step backwards. And you don't want to deny it, being that world is emes. The world represents God's truth. Now, we said before that Hashem is not giving us obligations. He's telling us what the reality is. We are saying there's a world of emes here. And if you're going to have a world of emes, then you must have a world that's eternal. And you cannot have a world that just suddenly happens, because that means now the world is emes. But before that, God lived in a world that was different. And God changed. So we have a serious problem with saying the world is created out of Ratzon. And we come to having to consider, and I want you to look at your handouts now, that the fact that we're having this conversation is very important, because if Hashem created the world out of Ratzon, that means we have Ratzon, we have choice. But if it's true that this world is an absolute system that works, and it's Chachma, and it's eternal, and it's not changeable, and God and the principles of existence always coexisted, then, like Ariel said, there's no free choice. It just is a system, and if you tamper with the system, you won't make it. You're finished. There's no flex, there's no tshuva, there's no tefillah, there is no hashgacha where Hashem changes things for you. Nothing can exist. It's a closed system. And it includes God too. So, in fact, part of that, clearly there's truth in the fact that the world is a system, which we're going to see in a little bit, we're going to see in the Nefesh HaChaim, which is, look at your handout. I think it's handout number 2. Actually, handout number 1, we could look at later. But handout number 2, the Nefesh HaChaim says, essentially, and I'll let you read it later, that there is a system in play. Okay, Nefesh HaChaim is a Makobol, the Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. Says, yes, there is a system in play. And every single move a person makes, thought, speech, and action, triggers reactions that reverberate throughout the system, causing all kinds of further reverberations. And if you could see the whole picture, you would see how everything that happens down here goes through a system that is set in place, that is affected by what we do and say and think. So that a person might say, I don't know what shatnez is about. However, if a person wears shatnez, let's say we're in it together, they are tampering with the system, which creates all kinds of malfunctions, which has all kinds of ramifications, which affects all of us down here. We respect the system, we trust it. The Nefesh HaChaim says, yes, absolutely, there is a system, and he adds a dimension to what we always speak about. We always say that being a Tzelem Elokim means you are a creator, right? Remember this? God is a creator. Elokim is the only name of Hashem in the first chapter of Bereshis. We are Tzelem Elokim. We are creators. We create our world. Nefesh HaChaim is taking it kabbalistically. You are creating everything that happens in the upper spheres that affects us down here. You are creating your reality by either by working with the system, or God forbid, tampering with the system. So look at the Nefesh HaChaim later, okay? And you will see, so we have strong evidence that there is definitely a Chachma, an emes, a system in place, but Chachma and emes must be eternal, which precludes a sudden decision to suddenly, add more emes or Chachma to God's existence. So what do we do with that? And what do we do with the fact that Chachma does not allow really for full free choice? Because the system itself will just, react. And you won't be able to override it, so where's the choice? Okay? Is everyone with me so far? Yes? Let's clarify this, okay? Ask me your questions. Say them loudly, though. The Nefesh HaChaim is in the back. All the handouts are always at the back. First is always the shear, and then the back is the handouts, okay? So turn to the back. The first page is what I want you to look at yourself. Let me stop here. Since this shear is going to take 2 weeks anyway, let me stop here and tell you a story. I don't generally tell stories, right? You know that. There's so much content that I don't get to the stories. But this one, this source page here, the first one, handout number 1, which is the front and back.
It's not the back.
Not the back? What happened? All right, so it's just the front. This source, okay, the handout number 1, I don't even know what the 1 is, it's the one or it's staple. Okay, the one that says it is a good deed and he has praised for it. Okay, this first page. Oh, I'm sorry, this got a little, okay. The Nefesh HaChaim is handout 2, it's your last page, I think, okay? We're missing pages, I'm sorry.
What's the first word on the top?
It's not our,
What's the first word?
yeah, but you know what, there are pages missing. Tanya is going to email the notes to the shir, we are missing the other page of the Nefesh HaChaim. I'm sorry. The Nefesh HaChaim says, let me read it. I have it here. I have it here.
Jet lag.
Hold on. No, it's not Tanya's fault. It was it did the two-sided didn't come through.
Yes.
Okay, listen. Let me read the Nefesh HaChaim, and then I'm going to tell you my story. Okay, the Nefesh HaChaim says the following under Tzelem Elokim. God, likewise, when Hashem created man, He empowered him to control countless forces and worlds, handing them over to him, so that he should direct them according to his actions, words, and thoughts, whether for good or, God forbid, for the opposite. With his good deeds, words, and thoughts, man sustains and gives energy to countless forces and holy celestial worlds, increasing their holiness and light, as it says. He quotes a pasuk from Yeshayahu. Then he goes on. The sages express this idea in their commentary on the verse. V'chol banayach limudei Hashem. Don't say banayach, but bonayach, what you're building. Do not read banayach, your children, but bonayach, your builders. They are builders, creators, in the sense that by doing mitzvahs, they exert an influence on the higher world, like a builder who designs a structure and brings it to completion. Conversely, through man's wrongful actions, words, and thoughts, he causes incalculable destruction in the higher worlds, darkening and diminishing the radiance of holiness of those worlds, reinforcing the sources of spiritual impurity, which is disconnection. Okay? This is the underlying sense of the word, Vayivra Elokim es ha'adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oso. So we're not just talking about creating our worlds by our choices, which we always talk about. This goes way up there in Kabbalah too, that what we do is interacts, is kind of either initiates reactions, both positive and negative, and there's a whole system in play that is responsive to what we do, to our choices. But since the system is emes and it responds in a scientific way, in a preset way, then there has to be almost like discoverable patterns and methods. But that's not really the case. Sadik Varalo, Rasha Latovla, the people that obviously tamper with the system and nothing seems to be happening. So what is that? Can you tamper with the system and then is it built into the system that there are no reactions? So how come some people do, some people don't? So we have to know that there's clearly Ratzon in play here too, right? There's Ratzon in play here too, and we're going to develop that. It cannot be strictly, like Aristotle says, pure Chachma, because it denies free choice. It doesn't explain how different people work with the system and have different reactions, and it doesn't allow for tefillah, it doesn't allow for hashgacha pratis, it doesn't allow for these things if it's pure Chachma. On the other hand, if you deny Chachma, then what is the Nefesh HaChaim saying? And he's talking Kabbalah, he's talking what's going on. So clearly it's going to be both. Leah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because you said that we create our own worlds and we create different, there's a thought that everybody, what she does also creates my world.
That's what he's saying. We trigger a system which reverberates and has reactions.
Not only affects
No, it affects everyone, and what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what we're going to get to, which we're eventually going to talk about, which is the Masa Merkava, but we've talked about this, the divine chariot. That is what the Nevi'im saw. That is the beyond comprehensible, okay, interaction between this elaborate system that Hashem created and human free choice, which triggers the system, creates all kinds of reactions that affect everyone else and every other thing, and how all of that is allowed to go on, and within all that, God is still making the system work perfectly, and the system is bringing us to the ultimate goal and destination, and everything that happens through our free choice, and all those reactions and reactions, and what's the other, and the infinite set of things that the moving parts in this somehow in the end get the part of the echad, the one absolute truth that will be, revealed as the absolute Metzias, at the point where everyone will see that that's what it is, and that's Umala Kol Ha'aretz Hashem. Everyone will see that. Let me just stop here for the story. The first handout is from Rabbeinu Bechaya, who wrote a sefer called the Chovot HaLevavot. Okay, this sefer is foundational. Rabbeinu Bechaya wrote it. I had a bio on him on the other side of it, which isn't here, but he was from Sfarad, one of the Rishonim, and it was to balance the emphasis on our obligations, our mitzvah obligations. Now he said, what are the duties of your heart, your midot, your thoughts, your feelings? So in the 7th shar, he speaks about Lashon Hara, misusing the koach hadibur, and he speaks about the fact that if somebody exposes someone else's deficits, so that person now has nowhere to hide, and they're unsafe in front of and before everyone's eyes, and they are in exile, they've taken away from a person their place, their identity. So what happens, Rabbeinu Bechaya says, is the person that is spoken about, okay, the person that is spoken about finds that all his ave or her averot are transferred to the speaker.
We cooked that here.
Oh, some don't have it.
Yes.
Oh, you have it, okay.
Yes.
And all the zechuyot of the speaker of Lashon Hara are transferred to the victim. And so when a person gets up there and they see zechuyot, they say, I didn't do these mitzvot. It's okay. It's the mitzvot of the person who spoke Lashon Hara about you. And the person says, where are my averot? They're gone. They went to the person who spoke Lashon Hara about you. Now this Rabbeinu Bechaya is very powerful to keep in mind when we are about to how did I get this source? Okay, here's a crazy story. So I was teaching in Queens on Tuesday, and they come out at 11:15, and my car has a flat tire. Okay. So you call Chaverim, they come a half hour later, and he's like, okay, where's the wheel lock? Just heads up, everyone. I'm like, where's the wheel lock key? I'm like, what do those words mean? Wheel lock key. Well, you have a lock on your wheel, and there's a key.
Right.
Okay, 15 minutes later, there is no key. I don't know where the key is. There's no key. Okay.
compartment.
No, it's
Glove
not.
compartment.
So then we go, okay, what do we do? I can't change your tire. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? So then I call, my friend in Ratzon or Chaver, whatever, like, what do you do? Oh, get the local tire guy, they'll break it for you, and then, okay, local tire guy can't break it, we don't have a master key, another half hour. Finally call Mazda. You can't break it, you'll break the whole thing, and nobody has a master key except the dealership, you need to be towed to the dealership. And I'm like, I have to be in Brooklyn at 3 o'clock to teach. So I called the woman whose house I had just given the class in, and I said, I'm still here 2 hours later, and the problem is that my car has to be towed, and she goes, oh, well, my in-laws are in Israel. You want to just take their car, I'll be here, let them tow it, and pick it up later. I said, oh my goodness, thank you so much. She gives me the car, I get in the car, and I'm driving home, and there's like CDs all over the place. I pick up a random CD, okay, pop it in the thing, and guess what the CD was about? It was all about Lashon Hara, and about Dibur, and this whole thing. And it was a shir by Rabbi Mansour, and it was excellent, excellent, so interesting, so many ideas, so many things pulling together. It was really well done, just beautiful. And I'm listening to this, and I had a Kesher Yehudi event. We had a beautiful Kesher Yehudi event last night. I want to mention that also. Little commercial break. It's our 10th event. We had, 150 people.
Nice.
Tons of people came. Israelis, religious, not religious, Americans, there were tons, from the religious community, all kinds of people there. It was really, Kesher Yehudi really is an idea that people respond to, that we personally in our own little lives can do something that directly strengthens Am Yisrael, and that is Achdus. But Achdus is a very big thing, and we know what Kesher Yehudi is. Two people that would have never had any kesher, would have never had anything to do with each other, who will now commit, for the sake of the strengthening Am Yisrael, friendship by friendship, to get to know each other, to speak, to share ideas, to grow, to be enriched by each other. And that's our goal, and that's the goal of the parties, and thank God it was really special. Anita's helpers, Anita, she here? There she is. Anita and Tanya. And it was a very special event, and Baruch Hashem, you were part of Kesher Yehudi. We've been together, from the beginning. And so I was going to speak about Dibur and things like that. So I'm listening to this speech, and I'm like, this is so fortuitous. Like, I would have never heard this. So fine, that's just the beginning. So I'm so happy. I'm like, see, it was really It was good, you know, it has a silver lining. So then, anyway, I can't pick up my car, so the next morning at like 6 a.m., I'm in Queens, 6:30, dropping off the car by Jody, taking an Uber to the dealership, getting my car, and I walk into the dealership, and this, I forgot her name, this woman who's a sunshine, with this beaming smile at 6:30 in the morning, goes, "Oh, Esther, yes, I know you were so upset yesterday with this whole I hope you know you're settled down a little bit." So I said, actually, it was all really for the good. So she said, "What do you mean? Tell me what you mean." So I basically told her I had this speech. So she said, "Well, what were you speaking about?" A Spanish woman. I said, "Well, it was about the power of words and how words create either positive realities or negative realities." She goes, "I wish I could hear your speech because you know, I used to be the kind of person that was so angry at everyone, and all my conversations were with anger and with cynicism and doubt. I doubted, you know, she said, I was really, you know, my words were always negative with an attitude, angry, and she says, but not anymore." I said, "Well, you certainly don't look like that." She said, "Well, I went to anger management and I started reading this book." And I said, and she said, because she said, "You know what? Because I could not live anymore. My relationships were being ruined. I was always angry. I was physically sick. I couldn't live with it." In other words, it's a mitzvot. You can't live like that. You can't use your words for anger and negativity and live. Just, I couldn't live, and I had children, and I want my children to, you know, live in a positive environment. And I just couldn't continue this way. So I said, "Well, who motivated you? Who inspired you?" She said, "I don't know, I just had to. I just had to." Her soul, her connection to the mitzvot told her that she had to improve. So she said, "And now I'm a whole different person. But my family, you know, I got this negative attitude from, they don't trust me, they don't believe me. You know, obviously they see what they see through their own lenses." She says, "But now I am sure that every time I meet someone, it's positive, it's up, you know," and she was all sunshine and all smiles and all radiance, and I'm like, I said, "Well, this is," she goes, "Well, this was meant to be too, obviously." So not only did I hear it, I met a person who literally said, "I cannot live if my dibur creates a davar that's negative, that's in contradiction to, you know, the reality of life, of love and relationships and connection. I can't." So I found that flat tire with that wheel lock was a gift. And sometimes, you know, it's so crystal clear. So Baruch Hashem, and Rabbi Mansour used this source. So I went there. So that, among all the other things. Okay. Are we ready to continue? Have a question?
So you had mentioned about Tzaddik Baralo, the Rosh Hashanah, but we know many times that some things happen. For example, we had the Mechiras Yosef, but the reverberations of it didn't come until, you know, when the 10 tzaddikim were killed later. So many times the reverberations of something you may do may not necessarily impact you on your day, on your life.
Very important. In a system of Chachma, Nachama, my sister-in-law, is pointing out that in the system of Chachma, where every action has a reaction, it is the composite of all of history that this plays out. It is not necessarily immediate. So, but it works. The system will work as a system, and we have to respect it, because if we tamper with it, we don't even know the extent of God's mind in a way. However, we left it at the place where we said that clearly it cannot be, okay, pure Chachma, correct? Because why? Chachma includes Chachma as emes. Emes means it must be. It must always be. You can't just start being emes. Emes leaves us without real Ratzon. Ratzon means I just decided. It's a contradiction. Did Hashem decide, or is it emes? Two different things. Okay? I hope you understand the problem of Chachma here. Now let's continue. Okay? Now, in discussing, actually, to continue further, just to develop the Chachma, develop this idea further, okay, we have to question, what is a miracle, okay? What is a miracle? Tanya, where is that thing that says, what is a miracle? I don't know
They're
what
all
happened.
miracles.
I don't know what happened. Okay. Okay, so look in Shemos 14:27, turn the first page. So in Chachma, what is a miracle? We normally, you know what, Tanya, you know what's missing? I think the whole Ratzon section.
It's on the next page,
Oh,
isn't it?
yeah, nice mystery. Okay,
It's
so in
number
the
2.
Chachma section, what is a miracle? Let's think this through. Can there be a miracle, God suddenly deciding to break into history and do something on the spot out of desire in a Chachma system, yes or no? Can you have if everything is Chachma, what is a miracle? What is a miracle?
The Ramban says that every day is a
We're gonna
miracle,
get there.
every minute's a miracle.
We're gonna get there, but what is a miracle according to Chachma? Because Ramban is all Ratzon. What is a miracle according to Chachma?
Something's out of nature, something isn't what
Mama
you
So
expect.
the system isn't working,
Working
and
as
Hashem has to
differently.
now come in and do something and change the system?
Something we don't understand.
It's essentially, okay, so the Chachamim, okay, are very conscious that there is no question that there is a system of Chachma here, despite the fact that clearly there's gotta be Ratzon. Obviously, the world, Rambam says, is an act of Ratzon, period. And we're gonna delve into Ratzon in a moment. But Rambam establishes, obviously, the world is an act of Ratzon. God willed it, we say it all the time. And that's why we have Ratzon, we can will, we can actually make choices, okay, that are free, like God did. But the Chachamim, nevertheless, knowing there's of course Ratzon, they were very careful. Listen, what we're going to read this now, Gracious Rabbah, to not call miracles an act of Ratzon, rather part of the system. Part of the system. Work already built into the system before they ever happen. So, if you look at the pasuk regarding the Yam, okay, Vayat Moshe Tedo al Hayam, Moshe lifted up his arm, and before daybreak the sea returned. Now look at the word bolded, le'etano. Is a funny word to its strength. The Medrash says here, read le'etano, it's a code word, it's telling you something. L'tanai shalo, to its condition. Hashem made a condition with the Yam that when the Jews get there, it will split. It's part of the system. It's how the system works. Now, we talk about system 1 and system 2, remember? When the system means when we are, like the next Chaim says, completely in sync with the system, it works. So we get to the Yam, it splits because we needed it to be. When you are in sync with the system, part of the rules of the system is it's in sync with you and it does the right thing when it's needed, and the Jewish people running around the freedom, so it's split. It's part of the system. And then the Medrash goes on to list all kinds of other nisim, and the Medrash says all of them were part of the system. Now what Chachamim are doing here is they don't want to say that God broke into it and changed it, because that would imply that there's no system. The system doesn't allow for certain eventualities. The system doesn't cover all bases. There's gaps in the system. Hello, if the system is Chachma and Chachma is Emes, it has to work perfectly at all times. It can't be faulty. That God has to break in and change things. So they say, no, it's part of the system. It's meant to work like this. Hashem already built it in. So here's the mashal. Somebody is renting your apartment, and you say you have to be out by January 1st. They don't leave. So what happens now? So we take them to court and all kinds of things. They broke the contract, okay? But you can write the contract like this. You have to be out by January 1st, but if you don't, every day you stay, it costs $100. So when they stay, they're not breaking the system. There's provisions in the system to deal with it, okay? So according to Chachma, Chazal are clearly seeing Nisim as part of Chachma. Agreed? As part of the system. However, we say that the reason we believe that Hashem has Ratzon is because of why. What do we say on Shabbos? How do we know Hashem created the world? So why do we keep Shabbos? It's a testimony that Hashem created the world out of Ratzon and took us out of Mitzrayim out of Ratzon. Okay, so the great miracles, Yitzias Mitzrayim are the great miracles. We openly say we keep Shabbos to show that these Hashem did great things for us out of his Ratzon, and we're testifying for that. So all these miracles, are they acts of Ratzon or acts of Chachma? So we have, you see this question here? Okay. The question now, we're in Ratzon now. Ramban, okay? What Ariel just said. Ramban takes the position now of Ratzon. Everything is Ratzon. Everything, we just said everything is Chachma, now we're doing the other side. Everything is Ratzon. Again, obviously we're going to put them together, correct? But Moshe Shapiro spoke a lot about the union of Chachma and Ratzon. Okay? So here's the Ramban. Everything is Ratzon. How does that work? This is, he says, you should know. And from the great public miracles, like Kriyas Yamsuf, a person can also concede to hidden miracles, every hashgacha pratis, which constitutes the foundation of the entire Torah. Miracles, he's talking about like Hashem just, choosing minute by minute to interfere in our lives and do things for us. There's no system. Everything is God's action, reaction directly between us and Hashem can override every part of the system and does override the system at all times, and oil can burn, vinegar can burn, nothing matters. The rules don't really matter. It's Hashem's direct relationship to us. So he says, as a person does not have a share in the Torah of Moshe, our teacher, until we believe that all of the things and events we encounter are all nisim, and there is no nature or custom in the world with them, whether with regard to the many or to the individual, meaning the collective or the, right? But rather, if one does the commandment, because of Hashem's Ratzon, right, his reward will bring him success. And if he transgresses them, his punishment will cut him off because he's either connecting to Hashem or disconnecting to Hashem. Everything is the decree of Hashem on a moment-by-moment basis, as, action-reaction between a person and Hashem. As I've already mentioned, and hidden miracles regarding the many, like the lower open ones, right? Hidden miracles regarding the many become publicized when they come from the objectives of the Torah in the form of the blessings and the curses, right? If you do this, this will happen. If you do that, this will happen. Not the system. You please me, I please you. That type of thing, right? We're connected. And he goes on with that. So what are we going to do with this? Everything is Nesim, everything is Ratzon. So actually, under this system, what is the system? What are the mitzvahs? Hashem says, don't eat chazer. But Hashem makes a chazer. And says a pig, Hashem says, don't eat a pig, it's tameh, which is not a literal term, it's a spiritual term. It will, if you eat a pig, you will tamper with the system. So I'm making a pig, and I'm saying that eating this pig tampers with the system, don't do it. So technically, so what's the purpose of that? So if we don't eat pig, why are we doing it? We're not tampering with the system, that would be Chachma, or according to Ramban, because Hashem said no, and we do it because Hashem said no, and that means we are doing what Hashem wants, and Hashem is doing then for us. We have a flow between us, and technically the pig doesn't really matter. It's just, all the mitzvahs might just be a method, a mechanism to have opportunities to listen to Hashem so that we could connect, so that Hashem could let his love flow, and we can have this relationship with Hashem. But does the system come into place? Because he's saying you can override the system all the time. Everything's miracles. There's no such thing as nature. Everything is directly from Hashem. It's not, what do we do with this? Okay? You see this? Everyone understands? Any questions so far? Because it's important to understand this. Yeah.
Chachma means that when the object was created during the 6 days of creation, Hashem told them at that time that when
Yes.
Bnei Israel crossed the
Yes.
Yam
That's right. That's when water was created, part of the system is it will split at that time. Remember when we used to talk about system 1 and system 2? Think about system 1. The system is when we are in sync with it, it interacts with us perfectly. That's part of the system. That's like tzaddik goes there, but Kadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim. Tzaddik commands and Hashem does. That's the system. That if you're in sync with it, it responds to you as it should. Now, we're going to do one or two more. We're going to have to continue. The question of tzaddik v'ralo and rasha v'tovlo comes up here. When somebody says, I don't understand, this person was did all the mitzvahs, and the system didn't work for them. Terrible. So that person is saying there's a system, it's Chachma, and it's supposed to work, and it's supposed to have rules, and why would this violates the rules? I'm keeping the mitzvah, and I'm getting repercussions that shouldn't happen, right? The person, we're asking that question through Chachma. Now, what if we say everything is Ratzon Hashem? Then what happens to this question? Everything is Hashem's Ratzon. Individually, for every person, every moment of the day, whatever happens is Hashem's Ratzon. So then what does the person say? There's really no question. There's really no question. Because Hashem's Ratzon knows what's good for us, irregardless of whether we keep the mitzvahs or not. We have a destiny, we have challenges Hashem wants to give us, we have things to achieve, and despite the fact that the person keeps the mitzvahs, which is always the right thing, Hashem, with his personal connection, puts things in people's lives that bring them to certain places and, and hopefully, draw out of them certain greater strength. It's Ratzon. It's nothing to do with the fact that I didn't keep the mitzvahs. It's not a punishment. I kept the mitzvahs. I don't expect there to be some type of system that I do the mitzvahs and this exactly happens. It's Ratzon, there's no question. Does that make sense? With Ratzon, there's no question. The question comes from Chachma, correct? Now, when the bracha and klala, the reward and punishment, Hashem, according to the Ramban, and this is, Hashem says, if you keep my mitzvahs, the simcha, by the way, the simcha, everything will flow, I will respond to you constantly with love, and you'll have everything you need, but it's a Ratzon relationship, okay? Under Chachma says, oh, wait a minute, if we do this, this will happen. If we do the mitzvahs with simcha, the rain will fall, there will be no illness, there will be no poverty. That's the system. Okay, now, wait a second, that's not happening in my life. What's going on with the system? The bracha and klala seems to be telling me there's a system, a real ironclad system. Where is it? Okay, so the question of bracha and klala come up through, if we only look through the lens of Chachma. And the question inside of our, if we're all adding Ratzon, is a whole nother equation, correct? Okay. The idea of Hashgacha Pratis, can you tell me what that is? Hashgacha clearly comes through what? Which system is Hashgacha Pratis? You could say either way. Where would it be in Chachma? As the Nefesh HaChaim said, Tzaddik goes over HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim, and I plug into the system correctly, I get the right reactions. Hashgacha. Or Ratzon, because suddenly someone who's not plugged into the system gets Hashgacha. Where is that coming from? Where is that coming from? Someone who's tampering with the system all day long, and they have clear Hashgacha Pratis. Where is it coming from? Okay, see? All right, now, we'll leave this for next time. Now we're going to touch on this. I'll leave you with the question, okay? Women are putter from certain mitzvahs. We just don't have to do tefillin, tzitzis, bris milah, okay? From Chachma, from the lens of Chachma, why would we be putter from these very, very important mitzvahs that men have? Why would we be putter? No, but through the lens of Chachma. Right, okay. But like, all the mitzvahs aseh, shman grama, right? But why would we be putter through the lens of Chachma? The system does not require it. Correct? The system doesn't require it. We're not lacking anything. This system does not require it. Period. Okay? So what if we choose to do a mitzvah that the system doesn't require? Anybody here want to grow payas? The system does not require that we don't cut our payas. You can cut your hair over here, okay? So let's say we decide we want to do one of those mitzvahs that the system does not require. A, is there a benefit? Yes. You make a bracha, there's a benefit. As much benefit as someone who the system requires? No. But hold on. Remember the halach is Gadol mitzuva va'osa me'enu mitzuva ve'osa. It's someone who is commanded because it's part of the system. It's greater for them. So A, the system doesn't require. B, it's still positive within the system to do it. We make a bracha, no question about it. So why would we do something that the system doesn't require? Not because of Chachma, but Ratzon, because we want to. Why do we want to?
In the morning, though, you say a bracha, Shasi,
We're gonna get there. Now, Sha'asani.
So no.
Why do women opt to do mitzvahs that the system does not require? And how do you know the system doesn't require it? Here's an example my grandfather used to give, and then we're gonna end here and continue next week. He said, how do you know the system doesn't require women to do these things and nothing is lost? Right? And women, when we do things, these things that we're not required to do, it's an act of Ratzon. We love it and we want to, and Hashem responds with Ratzon, which explains Shasani, Kirit, so no. But how do you know that the system doesn't require it? So my grandfather said like this. It's in the Tefillah Sefer, well, not fleshed out this much, on Shalosh Sanit Isha, which is a whole nother shir which you can go listen to on Torah anytime. Part is in Torah, we did feminism and Mashiach, and the whole Shalosh Sanit Isha thing is there. From my father-in-law's phone number. Now, he said like this, would you hire, the shul is looking for a rabbi. Let's say somebody says, I have a great candidate for you. Let me explain. They never put on tzitzis one day in their life. They never wore tefillin. They never went to daven in a shul. Never took tefillah b'tzibur. They don't wear yarmulke. They don't have a bris milah. They don't sit in the sukkah. Okay? And they never learned one word of Torah Shabbal Peh, Gemara. They don't know any of it. Okay? Theoretically. Would you hire such a person for your rabbi? Okay. However, a woman,
Depends what shul.
right, true, that's true. Depends on the shul. A woman, clearly we're talking about a woman, okay? A woman who never did any of these things could be a prophetess. She could be a shofetet, a judge. It could be said about her like Hashem said about Sarah, listen to her because she knows better. And Yitzchak said regarding Rivka, Gam Baruch Tia, you should keep the bracha, trust her. And she said to Yaakov, listen to me. A woman, the system for a woman does not require it. And it doesn't preclude a woman from being this close to Hashem through joint mutual flow of Ratzon. Right? Does it make sense? Okay. Remember all this for next week. We will continue. Okay, have a wonderful, wonderful. Oh, I have a few announcements.